There aren't many things quite as frustrating in movies as a film that can't decide what it wants to be. Genre-confused flicks are the cinematic equivalent of a chef combining sushi and a traditional English roast into one dish. Some films, like Parasite, nail it and win an Oscar. Others, say Zack Snyder's Sucker Punch, end up a confusing mess. The Gorge, 2025's Apple TV Plus exclusive, directed by Scott Derrickson of Doctor Strange fame, might just be the latest entry in this messed up catalogue of genre blending. But what's it all about, anyway? Well, The Gorge tells the story of two snipers, Levi, played by Miles Teller of Hunger Games and Whiplash fame, and Drasa, played by Anya Taylor-Joy. Levi is an American sniper and Drasa a Lithuanian covert operative, and they're each assigned to guard opposite sides of a remote gorge for a year, with no contact with the outside world or each other. Isolated and going against strict protocol, in time they begin to communicate, gradually forming a bond that helps them cope with their odd mission. But soon, dangerous creatures start to erupt from within the gorge, and after one particularly vicious attack sends the pair of operatives tumbling down below, they realise that not all with their mission is as it first seemed. Battling desperately to stay alive, they simultaneously uncover a dangerous conspiracy which demands revealing to the world. With other threatening parties closing in, led by the ruthless Bartholomew, played by Sigourney Weaver, can Levi and Drasa stop the impending danger before it's too late and escape with their lives, and will their burgeoning romance survive the pressure? A quick glance at the trailer for The Gorge let us all know, before we'd even watched a second of the movie, that we'd be in for a wild ride. And I have to say that, for the opening 30 minutes at least, there was a part of me wondering whether I got that wrong. I was thinking instead that we might be in for a promising thriller after all, along the lines of something by, say, David Fincher or Paul Greengrass. Miles Teller, playing the leading role, brings an almost Jason Bourne-like intensity to the early film. The visual palette is lean and controlled, the character introductions efficient without drowning you in backstory. There are nice little details that suggest complexity and a promise of something more nuanced than your average action film. But then the movie decides to go completely off the rails. That serious, geopolitically charged narrative about two snipers from opposing sides suddenly morphs into what feels like a rom-com. We get these absolutely bizarre dancing scenes that feel ripped straight from an early 2000s teen movie, all painfully contrived dialogue and inexplicable musical montages. It's so jarring next to that serious first 30 minutes that you almost get whiplash trying to reconcile it. And just when you've adjusted from that tonal shift, The Gorge lurches again, transforming into some kind of CGI-laden fantasy action flick this time. And it's then that the penny drops. This film isn't a serious drama, it's not a teen comedy either. It's that strange kind of genre blender I mentioned at the start of this video, and it's churning out a concoction few people asked for and I imagine fewer will enjoy. Acting-wise, The Gorge isn't too bad. Miles Teller, for his part, does his best to anchor the film. He's an actor with genuine chops, someone who can bring nuance to a role. I refer you to Damien Chazelle's Whiplash if you want to argue with that. And here Miles is working overtime, trying to make sense of all this tonal chopping and changing. The other lead, Anya Taylor-Joy, is decent enough, although why the filmmakers felt the need to parade her around in skimpy clothing the entire time, even in the middle of winter, is a question I'd be asking if I were her. Visually, the film is a mixed bag that leans mostly towards disappointing. The early scenes, like I mentioned, have a calculated digital aesthetic, but as the film goes on, we're treated to that classic grey smeared CGI that suggests the effects were an afterthought cobbled together during someone's lunch break. Action sequences feel particularly video gamey, with characters inexplicably becoming experts at whatever they need to do in the story, just in time to move the plot forward. It's a shame all of this, as the Gorge's central metaphor, or at least what it could have been, the Gorge as a representation of geopolitical divide, is intriguing. What could have been an interesting exploration of communication across cultural boundaries gets abandoned pretty quickly and becomes a generic monster fighter. If I had to guess, I'd suggest that the script had been tampered with. Say, it started life as a thoughtful drama about two lonely snipers and was mutated by studio execs into something more action and fantasy. Speaking of the writing, dialogue in The Gorge oscillates between competent and cringeworthy. Those early scenes again, the Fincher Greengrass ones, are sharp and economic. There's a great scene in particular between Teller and Sigourney Weaver, but later moments are peppered with cheesy lines that sound like they've been cut and pasted from a dozen other action movies. You've heard it all before and you'll hear it again next week. Despite its relatively modest runtime, The Gorge does feel a little bloated too, especially considering its narrow setting and reduced character count. What could have been a tight, focused narrative, it zeroed in on the snipers and cut the monsters, instead meanders. Thriller, romance, monster movie, action spectacle, without truly committing to any of them. And I guess that brings us neatly back to where we started, a film that desperately wants to be everything and as a result is nothing. Some genre blenders succeed brilliantly. Tarantino's made an entire career out of it, but The Gorge is more like a fruit smoothie that's been left out out in the sun. Unappetizing, and you wonder why anyone thought this combination would work in the first place. But hey, at least Sigourney Weaver's still great. Anyway, nothing more to say. This is Movie Maverick, signing out.